Well, I mean, here in the East, there is a sort of relative peace at the moment, but it's a really volatile situation. I don't think anyone you would meet in Libya would tell you that everything is calm and everything is peaceful. Actually, there's a great deal of worry of what will happen in the days ahead, how this whole uprising will unravel, whether it will end like the opposition wishes with the ousting of Muammar Gaddafi, or whether he will actually have a retaliation, a sort of counter-offensive, and try to take back city by city using an incredible amount of force. So if you ask me about Benghazi at the moment is quite safe. But if that's going to last, it's something nobody really knows here and everybody worries about.
And if there is this very real danger of counter-offensives by Gaddafi loyalists, how is the opposition preparing for that?
I think the opposition is preparing for that. As they say, we know Gaddafi better than anyone else in the world. We have been living with him for 42 years. Now, let's bear in mind that most of the army commanders, especially here in the East, have switched sides and are now backing the opposition. They have also gotten hold of a lot of the weapon caches in this part of the country. That doesn't mean that Gaddafi doesn't have a force with him left. Actually, he still controls the elite forces. His two sons control the elite forces, and those are much better well-trained and much better well-equipped than the regular army is. So people are preparing themselves. Here in the East, they will tell you that it would be very difficult for the simple fact that he won't find any tribe that would back him in that. People tell you that in the West, it's a different story because throughout his 42 years of ruling the country, he has actually disadvantaged the East and tried to bridge more relations with the tribes in the West. So it is really a very difficult pattern on the ground here, based a lot on tribal allegiances, and those tribal allegiances sort of will make or break this whole uprising.
Now, one other development right there in Benghazi, where you are right now, and that is the National Libyan Council. This is the sort of, well, they don't want to call it an interim government, but they, you know, they are being formed there. The former Justice Minister announced that yesterday. What more can you tell us about this council?
Well, this is, I would say, a National Council in formation. It is headed at the moment by the former Justice Minister because he resigned, because he is viewed as a man who always spoke his mind, and he is viewed as a man who's actually quite honest. Now, it is a council that is trying to pave the ground for eventually an interim government, I would say, if the regime falls. They make sure not to call it an interim government because they say that that should be based in Tripoli, and at the moment Tripoli is not a liberated capital. Now that interim government is trying to bring under the same umbrella all the towns and cities that have fallen into the hands of the opposition. I think they're also trying to be a point of contact for the international community. They are hoping that the international community would impose a no-fly zone, because they say that would hinder the ability of the regime to bring in mercenaries. And according to the opposition, that's one of the biggest threats on the ground here. That National Council says that after that, if there is a fall of the regime, then they would look into a constitution, whether to adopt the pre-Gaddafi constitution from 1951 or rewrite one altogether, and then eventually pave the way for free and fair elections under international observers.
Okay, thanks, Hada Abdelhamid there, talking to us from Benghazi in Libya. Now let's go to London and speak to Lauren Taylor.
Thanks very much, Anand. And just some breaking news for you. Within the last few minutes, we've heard from the PA news wires that David Cameron, the Prime Minister, has urged the Libyan leader to go now, telling him that, quote, there was no future for Libya that includes him. And this was also him commenting on what he said he was delighted that a second Special Forces-led rescue mission for civilians from the Libyan desert had been successful, and he paid tribute to the armed forces who were involved. And indeed, this was obviously a series of efforts to bring out UK citizens who are in the desert there. The first action to remove hundreds, 150 from the country happened earlier, and we had some details of that. And of course, in the last hour, we heard that they'd picked up another 150. Harry Smith reports on the first of those operations.
British oil workers arriving in Malta after being rescued in a military operation shrouded in secrecy. Details are still sketchy, but it's believed 2 British Air Force transport planes entered Libyan airspace without permission. The British refused to reveal exact locations, but it's believed an airfield at Nafura was used to rescue 150 stranded oil workers. Soldiers from the elite SAS regiment were apparently on board, and the evacuees were then flown to safety in Malta. The British government released these pictures of workers leaving the aircraft in Malta.
It was scheduled to be 65, but in the end there was about 130 got on.
Really?
Yeah.
And
we were sitting in the aisles. It's very cramped, but we were just glad to be out of there and getting on the flights.
The British, along with other governments, have also sent warships to Tripoli and Benghazi in attempts to bring out their citizens. But it's thought more rescue missions will be needed to airlift hundreds more oil workers stranded in the south.
As I said, there's still people in the desert, so I can't say too much. I can't say where I came from, etc., etc. Because the guys down there are still doing an excellent job to gather all the guys together and get them evacuated.
The Foreign Office here in London has come in for severe criticism for what's perceived to be its slow response to the plight of Britons trapped in Libya. An official I spoke to a short time ago declined to comment on this latest rescue mission, but said they remain deeply concerned for the plight of other Britons trapped in remote areas of Libya. Harry Smith, Al Jazeera, London.
And just to reiterate, there are now 300 British citizens who've been rescued in similar missions. And also Germany says the German military has carried out a similar operation, airlifting 133 people from the same airfield near the Nefura oil fields. Guarded by paratroopers, the workers were flown to safety on the Greek island of Crete. Now, the resignation of Libya's man on the United Nations Human Rights Council attracted a lot of coverage on Friday, but it left many wondering why on earth Libya was actually a member, considering its record in that area. Nick Spicer has been investigating.
Last Friday was perhaps the first time Libyan diplomats here really stood up for human rights when they stepped down from their jobs representing the Libyan government. One of them stunned delegates to the Human Rights Council by saying the Libyan delegation here supported the revolution back home and so now represented only the Libyan people. The Human Rights Council has 47 members. It was set up in 2006 to replace the Commission on Human Rights, long plagued by embarrassing log jams where governments abusing their own people would protect each other from criticism. Libya was elected to the new council by the UN General Assembly last year. A large majority of countries voting in a secret ballot supported its candidacy, despite the opposition of leading human rights groups. But if you want a representative council, admitting such countries may be the price to pay.
The big question for whoever established the council is whether you exclude countries that are not upholding human rights, which means you exclude most of the countries on this planet, or you try to include them within the process of promoting and protecting human rights, more in hope than conviction that by being part of it, they will promote and protect.
The council is new in another respect. The United States has decided to join it after a long boycott. President Barack Obama thought it would be a good venue to push forward American views on human rights, to re-engage with the world, and now to seek international consensus on Libya, according to the U.S. ambassador here.
The council is showing that it is actually able to deal with crises in real time and to do our job of holding the perpetrators of mass human rights violations accountable and speaking together in condemnation. And that has not always been the case.
The American Secretary of State Hillary Clinton joins colleagues from Russia, the UK, and other countries here on Monday. The council last week decided to look at suspending Libya and unanimously ordered an international investigation into possible crimes against humanity during the crackdown there, showing that this crisis has made more than just the Libyan diplomats stand up and do their job properly. So too, perhaps, has the council itself. Nick Spicer, Al Jazeera, Geneva.
And that's all from London for the moment. Now back to Doha.
Aides for the Arab League Secretary General Amir Moussa have confirmed that he intends to run for Egyptian president. The Egyptian state news agency made the announcement through its text message service on Sunday. Moussa's office says while he intends to stand, his candidacy won't be official until proposed constitutional changes are enacted. The unrest is also continuing in many other parts of the Middle East. In Oman, at least 2 people were killed in clashes between protesters and security forces in the city of Sohar. Tear gas was also used on the demonstrators in the industrial city. 8 others were injured. Witnesses say at least 1,000 people had gathered to demand political reform. Tunisia has a new Prime Minister, AlBaji Qaid al-Sebsi. He succeeds Mohamed Ghannouchi, who resigned on Sunday. There had been renewed street violence in the capital Tunis prior to his departure. Nadim Baba reports.
A surprise announcement as Tunisia's interim president names a new prime minister.
At this critical moment, in order to maintain our national interest and to ensure that the state is up and running with all its institutions, I requested Mr. Baja Qaid Sebsi to assume the office of Prime Minister, and he thankfully accepted this responsibility.
AlBaji Qaid Sebsi is 84 and a former foreign minister. He served under Tunisia's post-independence leader Habib Bourguiba and under President Zine El Abidine Ben Ali. His appointment came hours after interim Premier Mohamed Ghannouchi unexpectedly stepped down.
I am not prepared to be the person who takes decisions which result in the loss of life.
The move comes at a tense time for Tunisia. Sunday saw new clashes on the streets of the capital. Officials say at least 5 people have died during street protests since Friday. Mohamed Ghannouchi took over as premier on the 14th of January after President Ben Ali fled to Saudi Arabia following weeks of protests. Critics say that since the Jasmine Revolution, there's not been real reform.
They've made a start. Some things have changed. The departure of Mr. Ben Ali by itself really means nothing. You got rid of a symptom, a symbol. So now you're going to do the rest of the process, and that is where people like ourselves viewing it from the outside say, you know, where is it going? How will it get there? How long will that take? And how long will the people stay calm while waiting?
Mohamed Ghannouchi has repeated the government's pledge to hold elections by mid-July. But almost 200 people have been arrested over the weekend. It's not clear how far the new Prime Minister can quell the anger on the streets. Nadim Baba, Al Jazeera.
Joining me live from Washington is Nuruddin Jebnoon. He's a professor at the Center for Contemporary Arab Studies and School of Foreign Service at Georgetown University. Thanks for joining us. What is the significance of the resignation of the Prime Minister?
So the decision taken today, this afternoon, by the temporary president, Mr. Mbaza, to appoint as a prime minister Mr. Baji Qaid Sebsi, remind me a kind of Romanian-style restoration of the old guard. Means Mr. Baji Qaid Sebsi, he's 85 years old. He served under Bourguiba as his Minister of Interior from 1965 to 1969, then his Minister of Defense from 1969 to 1970, then during the last years of the reign of Bourguiba from 1981 to 1986 as Minister of Foreign Affairs. The problem today is like this leadership in Tunisia continue to appoint this kind of patriarchal leadership without taking into considerations the legitimate demands and requests from the youth and young people who led this revolution. Mr. Baji Qaid Sebsi, he's out of touch, he's out of time, he's belonging other generation. What the Tunisian youth need today, who someone will be able to represent them, who someone will be able to respond to their legitimate demands.
Okay, so from what you're saying, it would appear that the resignation of Mohamed Ghannouchi and the appointment of AlBaji Qaid al-Sebsi is not likely to satisfy those groups who've been out on the streets demonstrating. How do you think then they will respond to this latest turn of events?
You know, I think the Tunisian youth will continue to mobilize. What we need today in Tunisia is to have a revolution watchdog body able to appoint a new government and able to write a new constitution. The major stakes of the new leadership is to write a new constitution able to meet the demands of the Tunisian